The future goal of education. Everyone must be educated in the same way. But why? If people think the same way, their reactions to problems are predictable. Creating problems can then be used to navigate the direction of the populace. And that, my friend, is control. A government or entity only needs to cause a planned reactional situation so that people react in a taught way from the programming they have received in school. For this to happen globally, they need to delete access to education outside the prescribed government mandate. Their focus will be private school, faith school, and homeschooling, eventually banning them so that all people are forced into the same educational establishments to receive the same programming. Education outside the modern narrative poses a threat. That threat is called free thinking and thinking not what has been taught by the state school. Something not many people know. Independent private schools and homeschooling do not legally need to oblige themselves to take part in the state national curriculum. This situation is dangerous for the state and needs to be quashed before more parents turn away from the state school education looking for alternatives. Faith schools introduce metaphysical beings like angels and ideologies far from the state school narrative, putting power in an external source beyond physicality or the government. It is outside of logic which cannot be argued with. Faith and homeschooling will be demonized as abusive to children and private school as a disaster for society. The truth is, state school is abusive sometimes, and abolishing private school as a reference for the quality to education is a disaster for society too. Some people and government education departments argue private school gives an unfair advantage. It may well do, but how it gives that advantage is obfuscated from those demonizing it. The solution is to raise the standards for the state school, not to eliminate competition. False arguments like giving the utilities of private schools to state schools, such as sports pitches, swimming pools, perhaps they're even heated, golf courses and horse riding fields, will somehow help state school pupils. There are not enough private schools with those luxurious utilities that can feed the state sector to make any real difference. The arguments are lies, they are blown up, and it is propaganda. They are there to make the have-nots feel happier in social justice world when there is the abolition of those private schools. They are being told that this specific type of privilege will help them. I doubt it. Privilege is not to be allowed. Everyone must be the same. There is a difference between hereditary privilege and people that have worked hard to gain an advantage. This distinction is never made. Anyone that does better from merit is lumped into the privilege category and is the focus of attack. They say success depends on luck to a large extent. How do you share luck? Do you cut it up and dole it out on a plate? What's the solution? If everyone cannot have luck, no one shall have it. We are all equal. Life must be fair. Parents of rich children will pay extra for activities outside of school. Again, creating this advantage the modern narrative is trying to stop, and rich people are not going to stop networking either, just as gangs and organised crime don't need schools to network. Privilege is defined as special rights or advantages. Prettiness is a biological privilege. Pretty persons can get better access to a rich or powerful person, putting their offspring into a privileged position. How fair is that your kids don't have the same opportunities because you didn't have the same geometry in your bone structure? And again, that horrid word, luck. Pretty men and women get job opportunities. It's the truth, it's not fair. And they can rise through the workforce faster than others. I've seen the dagger eyes of those hard-working women following the new hot totty into the boss's office just because her body proportions are more harmonious with beauty than the others. Again, genetics and a little bit of luck. Clever people have access to better universities and jobs, thus increasing their wages, making themselves more interesting to potential mates who are looking for stability and security. Sheer skill is also an aphrodisiac we need to get rid of. It is hypocrisy for social justice people in rich countries to take wealth away from the rich for redistribution into the underprivileged in that country. The less well-off in rich countries are richer than the well-off in poor countries. If they really believed in what they are doing and advocating, all people in rich countries need to have all their wealth redistributed to poor countries, even the less well-off. Otherwise, you're just as bad as the rich, since you're doing to poor countries what the rich have done to you. No less well-off person is going to allow themselves to be less well-off, are they now? But they will start the process for that to happen, and then react sadly when they realise they have been fooled. If you can get the underprivileged in rich countries to take from the privileged, you allow for underprivileged countries to take from privileged countries. If all education in the UK was state-run, then 90% of their utilities would need to go to Africa to compensate for poor schools out there. You can't have it both ways. The truth, private schools alone do not increase grades significantly enough to warrant its abolition. Parents that have a particularly studious behaviour pattern that often leads to their success pass that on to their children. That behaviour exhibited in school acquires good grades. It just so happens many parents that are successful opt for private school, creating a concentration of that particular type of person, i.e. their children. The school is then wrongly attacked for doing what the parents are responsible for. The private school, filled with those children, will create a studious atmosphere, helping their grades to rise. State schools need to create that same atmosphere before abolishing private schools. Otherwise, they are pulling people's grades down to have equality at the expense of quality. Networking at school is a different matter altogether. However, thinking school is the only place it begins and extends from is wrong. Extracurricular activities outside of the school will be paid for by the rich, and that can be used for networking. You would need to stop that as well, which means no child can have extracurricular activities. To stop privilege and advantage at all levels, we must control all that which causes them, like prettiness, cleverness, and skill. That can be done through transhumanism, the human-machine hybrid 10 years away, and genetic modification, which will most likely be used to assimilate that technology into humans. To have privilege or to normalize all people for equality, you will need to be connected to the cloud, which means being chipped. To be chipped, you need to believe in what you are being sold, and school is going to sell you that. School will break you down. It will break the barriers between race, social class, and gender. It will pit humanity against itself, white guilt, predatory males, and then it will continue to the other groups which are currently supporting this ideology. They too will be used and not left out. Transhumanism will provide a solution. Computers will solve problems. Religion, faith, spirituality can turn towards the computer AI system to create a global community to save the world, currently being pushed in school under climate change. We will give up our humanity, believing it is the correct thing for something better, but it will be a trap. Education will be downloaded in the future. If you control what is being downloaded, you control behavior. The cloud will download globally, making a universal education, creating a universal perception and a universal behavior. If every child is forced into the government school programming now, by law, banning all different systems or alternate thought, then in the future, when that education is applied via AI and the cloud, using chips and downloads, all those kids will be swept along in the current without any opportunity to think differently, programmed by the narrative. Parents will not be able to choose different thoughts for their children. The agenda is to take away those rights from parents, promoting the notions parents are ill-equipped to bring up children educationally wise and behaviourally wise, using various instances in the media to prove their case. Children will be given more rights, as will the school. Children will be programmed to distance themselves from the parent into the new parent, which will be the school. When those children are adults, they will continue with this system, sending their children gleefully into the same programming as what they received. The aim will be to chip children when they are young in various different ways through technology, and when that happens, the trap is set, the new prison has arrived.